One of the biggest issues on the minds of New Hampshire voters ahead of today's primary is the state of the economy. With that in mind, former President Donald Trump and Nikki Haley will look to secure more delegates in the Granite State. Both candidates have emphasized their commitment to improving the economy. CBS News Boston anchor Paula Ebben joins us now from the Expo Center in Manchester, New Hampshire. Paula, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you. So how will New Hampshire voters view the economy and the effect on the economy that each of the candidates might have as they go into voting tonight?
This really interesting trend has emerged, Lilia, where, Republicans in New Hampshire are not like Republicans from Iowa. And I think the sense among the Nikki Haley campaign was that more moderate Republicans would swing her way, that she could convince them that she was the better choice if they had decided to abandon Donald Trump. The interesting phenomenon, though, that's occurred is in New Hampshire, even though people will tell you on paper consumer confidence is up, inflation is down, time and again, when we talk to voters in the southern New Hampshire region of the Granite State, they'll tell you that prices just seem to be higher. They're feeling a crunch. Whether or not they are an older person who are shocked by the prices at the grocery store every week, or a young couple, consider two people who met in New England at college. They both have a college degree. They both have great jobs. Now they have a baby and they want to buy a house, and they are simply priced out of the market. The average median home price in New Hampshire has soared to about $450,000. And combine that with the cost of childcare, and a well-educated couple, both working, are seeing that crunch, and that is beginning to eat away at people's faith in the economy and what is going to happen moving forward if they've abandoned the thought of ever buying a house. But I think the really sticky issue for people in terms of the outlook for the rest of this year, that gas and grocery trip happens every week, and so they're constantly reminded about how expensive things are. Over and over again in polls, former President Trump has portrayed himself as a businessman who understands the economy and numbers, and he's going to improve the economy. So, it's going to be interesting to see when we look at those percentages of how much Nikki Haley can convince undecided voters, those independents who are able to vote for her, just how big, if it plays out the way it is supposed, that the Trump campaign is going to be victorious, the percentage that she wins by, a lot of that might come down to not how economic numbers look on paper, but how people feel about it.
And let's talk about those independent voters. Look, both candidates have pointed at each other and called the other the establishment candidate. It seems to me from just weeks of reporting from all of our colleagues who have been covering New Hampshire that independent voters or undeclared voters are a big part of what happens tonight. How would you describe it? Is that a fact, or are people pretty much set on who they're voting for?
Well, I've been talking to our WBZ political analyst, John Keller, who is a veteran going back to 1988 of the New Hampshire primary. This is a highly unusual atmosphere, the fact that we're down to only two candidates and that we're used to seeing all the hubbub of candidates running around to diners and going to see people as they vote at polling places. With just these two candidates, it is going to be very interesting to see. We don't expect surprises. But Lilia, if you look back, New Hampshire, number one, New Hampshire voters don't like to be told what to do. They don't like the assumption by political pundits that they can be predictable. They always love to decide at the last minute, the 11th hour. And, who would have thought that after beating Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton winning the New Hampshire primary, 4 years later she loses to Bernie Sanders, or the other upsets that we've seen along the way. So the expectation is that former President Trump is going to win tonight. Whether or not Nikki Haley can continue on to South Carolina, or frankly continue on with donors is going to be dependent on her ability to convince those undecided voters to go her way. And we have until tonight. New Hampshire always sends a big message to the rest of the country.
We'll see. We'll see what the message is. Paula Ebben, thank you so much.
Thank you.